Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. I am here with a bonus video on my Spellbinders Crafty Advent Calendar that I opened every day in December and made little projects with. And I had a lot of requests for doing these little critters, which I mixed and matched other dies all from the Advent Calendar. So if you have this calendar, you can do this. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, not to be a tease, but to take literally 2 minutes before I show you those critters to go over the final tags in my advent calendar. I do have wrap-up videos from everything in this series in long format, and there's also a playlist of all of my videos, real-time and short format. I will link you up to all of that below, but these were the final 3 goodies that we got. Here we got some sequins, and I just created a focal for my sentiment, and I was going to create a full burst, but I didn't have time for that. The next day we got a cute little kitten, which I will show you a kitten when I build these critters in a minute. So you have 2 versions now that you can do with cats. And I created this little 3D box. And if you want to see more on that, I will have that one on my blog. This one was probably one of my favorites in this series. We got this flat suitcase die and I turned it 3D. If you want to see more on how I did that, please drop me a comment and I'll see if I can get to that video. Otherwise, again, I will have all the links down below for you on all of my previous work and as well as these 3. So let's dive into these critters. Here are the dies that I use to create all of these guys. They focus on the bulldog die from day 14, and there's a little peek at that guy. I'm pulling out the parts first that I used the most, and I'm setting them aside so that they will be here for the video. I wanted to talk about dropouts a minute. Did you see that little nose on the bulldog muzzle? That part actually falls out when you die cut it, and it's called a dropout. In case you didn't know, I learned that term just maybe a couple years ago. So even though I've been die cutting for 20 years, there are still things that I don't know, and I want to clarify those in case you don't know. All right, the other die set that I used for this project was the bee from day 6. So I've got all my pieces there. Off screen, I die cut everything in the colors that I wanted. So let's start with the elephant. From the bee wings, I did both of those wings. And then I've got the bulldog head, which will be my elephant head. I have the eye patch from the bulldog, and we're going to need 2 of those. And we're going to end up flipping the second one over so that it is the opposite eye. I also have the scarf from the bulldog, which is going to become the elephant's trunk. So I'm going to go a little bit slower with these guys in the beginning, and then I will get a little bit faster as we go. The other supplies that I'm using to zhuzh these guys up is a white and black ink pad, white and black pen, and then this little tool for shading. And if you don't have a little shader tool like this, I'll link you up to this product below. They're very inexpensive. All right, I am adding shading how I like it. You do it how you like it. I will tell you, at least for the elephant here, how I did this guy in case you want to follow along. So I shaded the eyes with white, and so this is all cut from the same gray cardstock, and this is going to add depth and dimension to our little critters. Then I shaded the inside of the ear where it's going to attach to the head in black so that it adds kind of a shadow to where the head sits in front of the ears. Now, the magic of this guy is the elephant trunk, which I took the scarf, and I know it's a little hard to see, but I clipped off the little bow end from that scarf, and that is going to create our elephant trunk. That scarf comes in very handy for lots of critters. All right, I am shading the upper side of the trunk that kind of bends more towards the light. I'm also going to add some pinwork to the trunk to create a little bit of wrinkliness, because anywhere our skin bends, that creates wrinkles. Same goes for an elephant, who are already pretty wrinkly as it is. And that will just add a little more reality to our little critter, so that instead of being odd pieces glued together, it looks more like intended elephant pieces. All right, I am showing you here how a lot of the Spellbinders dies impress these etch lines into the die to help you line up how they're intended to line up in your characters. These are going to come up over and over again. Sometimes you'll see the odd lines because I'm repurposing them. And if that bugs you, you can try creating a lighter sandwich in your die cutting machine to try and reduce those impression lines. but it's really hard to get them to go away completely. All right, here I just flipped over that elephant, that second elephant eye, and I had forgotten to ink it on the correct side. So I did that real quick off camera, and then I am assembling everything. Once you start getting everything in place, the pieces for the elephant kind of make sense and come together pretty quickly. As for the ears, I just kind of aligned the dip in the ear with the pupil of the elephant, and that kind of seemed to give the right proportions to the elephant ears. Okay, and here is a final look at that sweet little elephant, and I was going to add the pupil details, and I realized that those are holes for the eyes in all of these die cut pieces, so I need to back those holes with another piece of cardstock. Now you could back it with black and kind of leave it there, but the holes are small, so it's a little hard to see that. So I backed it with white, and I'm going to add that detail in with this glaze pen that is black. So it adds some shine and some texture to this elephant just for a little bit more detail. All right, let's move on to this raccoon. I created that guy originally, and you'll see that my second takes are slightly different, and that's okay. For this guy, I used the heart pieces from the bulldog die. I used the bulldog head twice. It'll be our raccoon head and our raccoon body. And then I used the outer ear die from the bulldog and the scarf again to create the tail. And then that bulldog eye patch I did 3 times. It'll be the muzzle in white as well as the raccoon eyes in black. And here I'm showing you that teeny tiny little dropout from the bulldog muzzle. So you want to pay attention to those little pieces and don't lose track of them. You may have noticed that I did use different colors of gray on this guy. And that is just to kind of create differentiation between the head and the body and so on. So that is why I use different colors of gray. All right, I glued my eyes on just like I did the elephant. Again, flipping over that second eye. And then the muzzle is really part of what makes the raccoon pop. So I glued the muzzle slightly to the left so that it's not completely center, especially since the shape hints towards the left. And I put that little nose on, that nose piece onto the muzzle towards the top. So all of these proportions kind of help build this character into what they are. If you glue them too far to the right or too far to the bottom, it just doesn't look the same. So play with your positions and see if you like the way I did it or if you like something else better. All right, here is that scarf again, and I'm kind of using a rounding motion with my scissors to cut off the little bow this time, and that will give me a curve to my raccoon tail. I'm using my glaze pen to kind of scribble black stripes onto that raccoon tail because that is a big characteristic of raccoons. So I'm trying to hit a lot of the highlights of these critters so that our brains can read them as something other than what they were intended to be. Those 2 heart die pieces from the bulldog, I am rounding off the pointy tip to create the ears on the raccoon. And I will say here that when I glued the eye patches on the raccoon, I shifted them inward towards the middle so that they covered up the holes from the bulldog head. Notice my previous raccoon, I had done the eyes opposite and he looks a little more grumpy. So orientation of eyes really matter to facial expressions. Okay, up next we have the bear, and I'm going to start going a little bit faster now as you're getting used to me talking about all these pieces. So for the bear, I used the dropouts from the bee eyes. Notice those big eyes on the bees, the parts that are left over. Sometimes I had to purposely cut another bee head just to get those eyes in the color I wanted. So I've got a dark brown one for the muzzle, a lighter brown for the head, and then whites for the eyes, and a tan for the inner ears, which we're going to use those bee wings to be the inner ears. I did cut out the pupils from the bee because we're going to add the pupils into this guy, and we definitely need that nose from the bulldog, as well as the bee body is going to be our bear body. Now the proportions are a little off on this one, but that's okay. Our brain does read it and we still get the idea. So you got to snip off the unwanted pieces, the bee antenna, the bee stinger. So that is the first step. Snip off those pieces you don't need. I am backing my bee eyes with tape so that I can drop in the whites of the animal eyes in there, or you could just back it like I did previously with cardstock. It's up to you. So next up is the ears. I'm going to trim off the excess part that we don't need from those bee wings. I'm just keeping the largest upper lobe of that wing. I'm going to glue in those extra bee eye dropouts onto that lobe, and you can play with the orientation here because I did it 2 different ways between my original and this example, so you can play with those and see what you like. And then I'm going to glue those bear ears on. I did look at graphics of animals online as I was doing this, trying to get those proportions right. So the bear ears need to kind of sit farther off to the side of the head rather than closer to the top of the head, and that gives it more of a bear profile. All right, I am gluing that other bee eye dropout, the dark brown one, over the little smile on the bee die cut so that we cover that up and it creates the muzzle of the bear, especially when we add that teeny tiny nose on there. It really goes a long way to turning it into a bear. I did glue that more towards the top. As I mentioned already, orientation of these things kind of matters. So here is the bee body. The neck has a little impression in it for the bee neck, and I glued that under the bear head so that we didn't see that impression anymore. Oh, and here I wanted to highlight that I didn't put any legs on the bear, but you could totally use the ears from the bulldog to do that, which I do several times with these critters. And that gives us our little bear. I didn't like the color choices of my cardstock because they were a little too contrasty, so I added a little bit more ink to help tie it together, but play with your colors as well. All right, we are going to move on to the caterpillar. This one was my daughter's idea, and it was so fun when she mentioned that it could be a caterpillar that I just love that idea. All right, I wanted to note here, the legs of the caterpillar actually come from the head of the bee. I flipped the head upside down, and I just die cut slightly into the head so that those little antennae would stay attached and give us easy gluability to get them to be legs on our bee. And then the other pieces we need are the head, the eyes, the pupils, and the extra antenna to glue on to the caterpillar. Because caterpillars are insects and bees are insects, it was less of a stretch to wrangle this one into a different character. All right, I ended up backing my bee head with white cardstock instead of using those bee drop-in eyes. And then I'm just going to assemble with the bee wings. These are becoming all the little segments of our caterpillar. For the segment, I did alternate colors, and for the segments that had shorter bumps, I overlapped them completely. The larger bumps, I kind of offset them slightly. And then this final bump, I wanted to rotate upwards so that it kind of looks like the caterpillar is stretching upwards. And you'll notice that when I get the legs glued on, it almost looks like he's waving hello to everybody. And when I glued on his legs, I didn't really realize it, but it also kind of looks like his butt is toward us. So he looks a little jaunty, like he's looking over his shoulder, waving at everybody. So that is the little caterpillar, and I thought he was terribly cute. All right, I did create this cat, and like I said, we got a cat die after the fact, but if you want this alternative kitten, here's what we got to do for that. We are using those bee pupils again. We're using the bulldog heart for ears, the bee head, that nose, and then this is the stripes from the bulldog sweater and the inner ears from the bulldog, as well as the bee body. So again, snip off the parts that you don't need from those bees. I'm adding some markers to this one just to color up my kitten. And again, I didn't quite like the colors that I used on this guy. They were a little too contrasty, so I might have started with a slightly different cardstock base. All right, I want to zoom in a little bit on this part because that is the bee body, and we use that on the bear, but on the cat, we're going to do it differently. We're taking that neck portion of the bee neck and putting it to the bottom of the cat, so that's going to be kind of his bottom that he's sitting on, and that gives him a hunched back that looks more like a cat. Back to coloring, I'm just adding little scribbly stripes to my cat to create a little ginger kitten. I put his nose slightly above where the caterpillar mouth is die cut because we're going to keep that mouth on there. I'm gluing the bulldog stripes onto the face as whiskers. And then for the kitten paws, I used the inner ears of the bulldog dies. One is glued on the front, the other is glued on the back, and that's going to give depth and dimension. And then I didn't add a tail to my original kitten. And we'll do that just in a moment with that scarf piece. I did give the whiskers a little bit of a clip, so that made them a little bit shorter. And then we're ready for that tail. And I'm trying to play around with the position and orientation to see if I could get it to curl around his body, but it wasn't working. So I glued his tail on back. I think the addition of the tail made a huge difference to this little guy, so I'm glad I thought of that here at the end. So that wraps up the cat, as well as all the critters I have to share today. And I wanted to let you know that I did create a PDF file on all of these. If you want to have that for reference, you can find it on my blog. Again, all those links will be down below. These were the notes that I took while I was creating these guys. And then here is a rough draft of the PDF. Hopefully I will fix any typos or errors before I get it published out to you. But I wanted to let you know that will be up on my blog. And you can print it out and store it with your die sets for future use. All right, I will leave you with a close-up of all of these little critters. I want to thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you want to see that suitcase tutorial, do leave me a comment because I listen to your comments whenever I can. And if you're new here, I always wrap up my videos by saying I hope you have an artful day. And you can see as we played with these dies, we really did look at them in artful ways.